Good day, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Executive Insights by Shipping and Freight Resource. Today, I'm thrilled to have with us Pamela Mar, Managing Director of Digital Standards Initiative by the International Chamber of Commerce, and one of the key driving forces behind the recently launched Key Trade Documents and Data Elements project. Pamela, firstly, a huge congratulations on the achievement and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you describe the mission and objectives of the KTDDE project as initiated by ICC DSI, and what is its significance for global trade?
So the KTDDE really responds to the need for simplicity, standardization, and alignment in trade standards for going digital. There's been a lot of great efforts by individual agencies and different players in the global supply chain, but few of these efforts have actually been coordinated from a kind of data alignment perspective. And if we want to have the kind of integrated, open, digital trade ecosystem where data sharing, where plug and playable data sharing is actually the norm, we've got to have alignment on standards and the data terms. So that means same taxonomy, same technical makeup, so that actually data can really flow up and down the supply chain, and not only within individual supply chains, but also across supply chains. And so that we can actually begin having the trading system that is like faster, more traceable, more transparent. So DSI was actually founded in order to address this and other kind of issues. And the KTDDE is our effort to bring everyone who is actually setting standards or driving adoption in any individual segment of the supply chain together around the same table with a joint commitment to interoperability and data alignment. So when we take these 36 key trade documents, and it's an official list by the WTO and UNCITRAL and SCAP, we took all of the organizations, which are the primary kind of driving forces behind these documents, or key to implementation or expertise on the development of these documents into digital versions. We took them and broke each of them down into core data elements, and then basically mapped across the entire vertical supply chain end to end, where each data point is generated and where it goes. And what we found out is that of the 36 key trade documents, there's around a set of around 200 data elements, which are really kind of the core that are required to process and execute and transact these documents, and that of these 50 are actually shared across 10 or more documents. So the key is, let's secure these 50, because that's our single source of truth. Let's verify it. Let's create a way to verify it. Well, let's align it first and then create a way to verify, authenticate, and secure these 50 data elements as the basis, for connecting up the global supply chain from a digitalized and data-based perspective. So that's what KTDDE has done. It's taken 18 months, nearly 2 years. It's brought together organizations which might not have been working together before. And it's done so in a way that's far easier than the many, many bilateral kind of collaborations which are taking place. Those are good. But if we really want alignment in the whole system, we have to actually come together on one platform and really work together on doing that. So over 50 organizations, over 100 experts. It's been kind of a labor of love, but we're glad we reached the an intermediate stage where we create that singular vision. And now the question is, how do we drive adoption, and how do we begin creating the trade ecosystem that everyone says that we want?
Absolutely. I mean, it has been, as being being part of the journey, it's quite refreshing a little bit to see how the KTDDE project was run. And big thanks to you as well on that. And in terms of day-to-day operations, how do you see this this project transforming day-to-day operations in global trade?
So today, if you're not an expert on sort of digital trade kind of documentation or compliance, you start to think about your supply chain, and going digital. Like, nobody disagrees with digital, right? Everyone says, okay, we have to go digital, we have to start transacting on data, and so on. But you don't know where to start, right? So which digitalized document do I use? How do I start managing the data related to that? What are the standards that are relevant? So the first thing is that KTDDE provides a guide. So here's where to start. We provide the list of 21 documents which are already harmonized, and where if you actually adopt these 21 digitalized versions, you will be on the road to interoperability. We point out what are the core data elements of any key document. And our suggestion is that start securing those core data elements first. And some of the data elements, this is why we provided the key trade glossary, we provide the definition and any relevant standards to those individual data elements, because that's what will help your supply chain connect to any other. So that's the first kind of objective, is to create an easy onboarding for anyone who's looking to take their supply chain digital. The second is actually to provide a guide for trade platforms which are in the business of connecting players along the supply chain using data, right? Every trade platform starts and they wonder, okay, well, how should I format my data? What data should, we transact? What are the document standards? Actually, this is the guide, right? Don't struggle alone. Use this as a guide and, go interoperable using this blueprint. So I think those are two. And then the last is for any organization which is working on the trade digitalization space, right? Eventually, you need to go beyond your own document, because your own document actually needs to connect to the 35 other ones that are in use in the supply chain. And this is a guide to kind of working on your own interoperability, because interoperability is not just for your data to be plugged and played elsewhere, but for you to be able to take your system and for others to plug and play their data into you, and for you to be able to trust that data, and to develop, the open APIs and so on. And, if every business is in the future going to be a data and services business, this is the starting point, or a midpoint, or a point to where you can actually expand, to adjacent service areas.
Yeah, some good points there, Pamela. So in terms of quick wins, you mentioned adoption previously. So in terms of quick wins for businesses, whether they are small or big, what are some of the quick wins to reach that stage of adoption?
So I think quick wins is start piloting. Choose a supply chain partner in a jurisdiction which is relatively more advanced in digital trade, and try executing, a transaction using an electronic bill of lading. Work with a bank that has, experience on electronic promissory note or e-bill of exchange, right? And try to, facilitate the payment process through that. There was a pilot just completed recently by Lloyds Bank. I think it was a vendor in India and then a buyer in the UK, and they basically collapsed by using an EBL and an electronic promissory note. They collapsed, I think it was like a week or more than a week of documentation, checking back and forth, DHL 5 times, et cetera, into 24 hours. And by the way, they use 2 different platforms. And so these are the kind of, of course, not every pilot's going to go operational, but you need to practice it so that your people, start to kind of realize the potential. And it's not that, any one party saved like 5 people's labor, and so, they can kind of eliminate these 5 employees. But what it enables you to do is you can expand capacity without necessarily expanding labor. And of course, the time saving And of course, the increased visibility, because every transaction you transact digitally, you kept a data trail. And then you aggregate that and then deliver insight back to your business. It's the whole present premise of digitalization, but you need those piloting, you need those experiments, and you need that kind of realization that this kind of innovation is possible in order to get sort of on the road and bank those quick wins with your people.
Yeah, I guess people have to start somewhere. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody started somewhere in the industry, everybody started somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
business. So this is also one of the areas as such. And I agree very much on what you said about the people and people's, hesitancy about this. Now, speaking about adoption, do you think it's going to be easier, or are there any benefits for the smaller players? And how do we include them and make this accessible for smaller players? Because they always complain, like the bigger players have
Mm-hmm.
advantage and things like that. So how do we make sure that smaller forwarders or shippers or customers are included in this?
Actually, I think what we've done is has delivers more benefit to the small players than the big, because the big players, they have their own staff and their vision, and they're already kind of on the road, and they probably have government affairs team who's looking at trade policy and so on. Whereas the small players, they've got one person managing HR, finance, IT, and admin. So to the extent that the KTDDE provides a roadmap to standards and to how the digital trade ecosystem is going to work, that's actually the primary beneficiary is going to be SMEs. I think the second thing is that, as a joint, as an adjunct effort to the KTDDE, we're also working on a reliability assessment for trade platforms and service providers. To date, there is no technical assessment for, trade platforms on their ability to reliably deliver the services which are allowed under the model law on electronic transferable records. So we often get, SMEs and companies coming to us and saying, okay, I'm ready to start. I want to experiment. Which trade platform should I use? And of course, we can give them a list of like the 20 platforms out there, and then they can kind of do individual, filtering, and, good luck to them. But you need a filter. So this reliability assessment is a first filter to say, okay, if you go with this provider who has been technically assessed to provide reliable services which are totally in line with the law, that's a starting point. So what we're trying to do is provide tools and frameworks which basically clarify and simplify digital trade for those who don't have their own kind of teams to go and figure it out for them. The greatest beneficiaries of interoperability in data are going to be the SMEs, because what interoperable data does, it allows you to aggregate structured data and with digital identity to tie it to any individual player. And that's your credentialing for trade finance. That's the source of the trade finance gap, right? That we don't have good credit data on SMEs, and so therefore they fall outside the formal big institution trade finance process. So what we're trying to do is create pockets of data pools which can be connected up and which provide evidence of a trading record that SMEs can use to then take to the banks and clear KYC and AML in a lower cost manner than the banks actually had to execute previously. And that will make that will put trade finance in the reach of SMEs. So when we say we need to digitalize trade in order to solve the trade finance gap, that's exactly what we're doing now with KTDDE with this first step.
So the scope is quite broad. Scope of the framework is quite broad, and it encompasses several elements as you mentioned. So in that sense, what sort of role do you think some of these technologies that are either here now or emerging technologies that that can play a role in the future of ICC DSI?
So I think obviously blockchain is one of them, because we'll need a way to secure, to verify that data hasn't been tampered with, that it's been only possessed. We need a way to keep track of the data trails and so on. The second is digital identity, right? Because you need a way to identify every player on the global supply chain and to be able to use digital identity as an anchor for all of their data trails, right? And that's the LEI is the only one that basically travels abroad in any jurisdiction. That's a second. And I think the third is actually going to be AI, because even though 21 documents of the 36 are already harmonized from a data perspective and aligned in terms of data, there's still 15 which require more work on, interoperability. And actually, of the 15, fully 9, they don't even have, a standardized digital version. So I think AI is going to be essential both to help us solve the interoperability problems, and to enable companies, because the another issue with companies is that they've got their own proprietary data system. That proprietary data system, that backbone, their internal infrastructure, isn't necessarily using data in the same way as the global trade ecosystem. It's not necessarily interoperable. And yet that's their whole business, right? To get them to change a data term within their proprietary system, it's basically very, very difficult, because they basically have to reformat everything and reconnect everything. So it won't happen in most cases. So we're going to need a layer to basically translate data from proprietary corporate systems to interoperable global formats. And I think that layer is increasingly going to be provided by AI. We see today already tools that can scrape data from different databases or documents or forms and turn it into interoperable formats, right? It's not perfect. It's a bit clunky now, and you need to check it. But, the thing with technology is that it only gets better over time, and it only gets more cheap.
Absolutely.
So I think AI is going to be really essential. So blockchain, digital identity, and AI, and that's like digital public infrastructure, right? Payments anchored by digital identity, blockchain for security. And I'm not saying blockchain's the only way, but it's one way that is in use today where it actually works. So, yeah, it's really neat. And I'm like waiting for the next technologies. Is it going to be invented?
I can see the excitement. I can see the excitement. So finally, Pamela, I just wanted to check, what do you see is the role of international communities and like trade bodies, governments, businesses? How can they work in terms of development and adoption of these standards? I mean, it's one thing to develop all these, but I think these communities play a big role in adoption. How do you see that?
So the first, get the word out. The more that international organizations and governments and industry organizations talk about digital trade as a reality and share those case studies and share the pilots and so on, the more that the businesses who never thought that digital trade has anything to do with them will see, maybe that's something I should consider. Maybe that's something I should find out. Because the worst way to get on board to digital trade is when you're like under the gun from your buyer who says, okay, digitalize now, right? You want to know about it sooner. And the public the public sector in terms of government and international organizations is really key to that. So to raise the level of public awareness on this issue. And then the second is actually provide platforms for piloting and experimentation. It can be anything: competition, pilot, digital trade corridor, sandbox, anything which gets businesses to play with the technology in a first riskless instance, with parties who are equally as committed. That's what we need to get people kind of in the right mindset, because honestly, everyone can do this. It's not difficult, but you need to change the habit, and habit changing comes slowly, because humans don't like change. So we need to give everyone the opportunity to take the first steps in a riskless, pro-innovation environment, and then learn, and then kind of adapt it into their business as part of their operations, and efficiency, and then start banking the gains in terms of speed, resilience, traceability, and so on. This digitalizing the supply chain can solve our sustainability problems, because it is the key to good ESG data. We build the environmental data layer on top of the key trade documents data layer. That's one. The second is this financial gap between SMEs and the rest. But I really believe, I used to come from I used to work in sustainability in the supply chains, and every big problem that I've encountered in terms of good data, and being able to trace where did the good come from, right? From the certificate of origin and so on. This is answered by digital trade. And so, the sooner we can kind of agree to get on this track, the better we'll be able to meet the environmental objectives and also social objectives that everyone agrees, and which I strongly believe in, we all deserve.
Absolutely, very well put, very well put. But it is a process, and I hope the final report of the KTDDE will help in pushing this adoption further and help in digitalizing global trade. Pamela, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an
Thanks, Arish.
pleasure, and thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights. And good luck to ICC DSI and KTDDE.
Yeah, I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.